So good morning to everybody. Today we are presenting something because the reason for the research we are going to present you with all the people that assist me in that is exactly to understand what is the perception about artistic perfumery, both outside and inside the world, and we'll discuss about what does it mean. So I'd like to introduce you all the guys around the table. So Marco Pietribiasi is Develon Group, so the technological and IT support for that and for the research we made in the internet and through a survey. Karen Dubin that we know since a long Karen Marin, sorry, Dubin. Karen Marin, that we are working together since a long time, and we will discuss it later on what's about the research was. Professor, may I call you professor now? Professor, please. Marco Ricchetti, I already had the opportunity to work with Marco on an analysis. The company is the CEO, so Blumine, about the economical aspect of artistic perfumery, and it was a research presented during Fragrance in Florence last year. And another very important supporter for me, Chiara Toniello, that is an analyst, is the one that is, I speak a lot and he transforms all my words in a file or in something more rational and less theoretical. So all this guy, you know, for the first time, we can see the next slide, please. Grazie. Next slide, please. Okay. No, the next one, thank you. So you see this word, Essencional. So I decided as one of the founders of Esxence to create a team of people. So unfortunately, today one of the person in the team, that is Sarah Colton, for personal reason can be there. And so we send her all our wishes because there is a family problem. But she worked intensely together, especially with Karen, for that, for all the research we are making and brainstorming. And so what is Essencional? Essencional is exactly an international team of people that knows quite very well our market, and we are simply asking to ourselves what really we need, how we can support. What is the perception of artistic perfumery in the world. And I think that after Marco will present us some result, we understand something very important. So if I can summarize it, I think is make it easier, please. Make it easier and let the people to understand better what is the added value of this market. So I leave Marco to present all the data, and then we will come back. Thank you so much.
I'm standing, otherwise I will break my neck. Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure being part of this work group. I am one of the founders of Develon Digital, which is basically supporting companies, delivering communication and promoting their brand, their products, their services through online and digital channels. And when we came in contact with Silvio, the mission was helping this work group to find some answers. After 10 years of presence of Esxence in the market, the question is, how is the market evolved? But most of all, how is the perception in the end consumer changed? Can we talk of a solid awareness about the niche fragrances segment? And to do this, we came up with a method that is based on 3 pillars. One pillar is the web listening. We've been basically scouting 1 year of spontaneous conversation happening online, on social media, on blogs, on forums. We've been reading through and analyzing them to get insights. The other pillar was addressing the search engine trends. So on one hand, how do they spontaneously talk? On the other hand, how do they spontaneously search when they need to find information about products referring to the niche market, and which is the most relevant and most popular topic to them. And the third pillar was the online survey, which has been done in 2 instances. One was B2C, so we've been addressing the community around Esxence of end users, and the other was the B2B, basically made up of professionals and market operators, PRs, and all people dealing with this market. The questions we've been trying to answer, first of all, which is the perception of niche perfumery confronted to conventional perfumery? The level of awareness, is it a clear distinction in their mind between the niche and conventional segments? Is there any recurring occasion to buy and wear a niche fragrance? Who are the people who are able to influence their community? I mean, can we talk about influencers? Who are the most active of them? Are they relevant for our market? And most of all, do these bloggers and YouTubers contribute in spreading the culture, or they just put up reviews and testify their experience with the product? On the other hand, the purchase experience, which is one, we will see it, a pivot element in the consumer experience. And how are the department stores perceived? What's the expectation on the customer experience and services? Or is there, which is the role of the staff inside the shops? Are there any related topics, sustainability, ecology, natural ingredients, that can be related to niche fragrances? And finally, is there any way of grouping these audiences into clusters resembling each other because they behave and they have the same attitude toward the product when they are online? So this is the set of questions we've been trying to address with all the 3 pillars. Let's get down to the insights. First of all, let's state it very clearly. Niche perfumery, online at least, is a niche topic of conversation. It's a very, very small fraction of the overall conversation about perfumery is dealing with niche. And what's most surprising is that even 90% of this conversation are happening, but the main promoters are market operators, brands, and perfume shop owners. And they are promoting their own product. They are not talking about the values, they're not talking about the culture, and they're not trying to spread or arouse curiosity in the users. And when it comes to the terms they use to mention the niche, it's niche fragrances. But we will see later that there is a whole dictionary of definitions that are in contrast, and they make up a fragmented landscape, which is, of course, an issue for this market. Another important thing, people searching for niche fragrances, they do not search by value attributes. They do not search including terms like niche, exclusive, luxurious, artistic, or artisanal. They search for brands, and they search for brands or product name. And this is quite a point, because if everyone is searching for brands, which is the room left to talk about the value? Online users' imagery and behaviors are different based on the countries. For example, when referring to niche market, the Italians talk about artistic fragrances. When referring to niche market, international audiences talk about luxury fragrances. Last night's dinner, the point was, if I buy Hermes, is it luxury? What's the difference between then a luxury brand, but which is mainstream, and a luxury brand which is actually part of the niche? So these overall terms are maybe too much broad. We need to find a way to convey and focus maybe more the attention about the definitions we are using. Niche or niche perfume is not a part of the mindset in our customers, at least the audience that operate online. It rather belongs to the market operators. The provocation here comes, are we sure that they are really interested in knowing which is the difference between niche or mainstream? Or do they just search for brands because that's what they want and that's the product they have been in contact with? Only 2.6% of Google searches actually can be associated to a niche concept, because all the others are direct brand or product name searches. So it's a very small fraction. It's relevant, but it's a small fraction of the overall conversation and of the overall searches. Actually, 3.3 out of 4 searches come from a mobile device. What's the point in this? When you are on a mobile, your intent is quite different, because if I search for a brand name where I'm moving in the tube or walking around the city, maybe I want to get to the closest point where I can buy the product. If I search from a tablet, from a desktop while I'm online at home on my sofa, I have more time to dedicate to the information. Maybe I'm trying to gather insights or information, and I'm not even close to the point of decision to buy. So the context where the search is made, or the conversation is made, is really relevant to any brand manager's content strategy. Oops, it's too sensible. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, this is it. Instagram is the king, of course, yes. It works in Italy, and it works on the international context. One curiosity is that we've been scouting with artificial intelligence all the pictures that are related to posts on social networks. 93% of the photos we found had a bottle in it. The provocation comes, is it the only way to talk about the product, portraying the bottle? Where are the values if you just push out content that is product, 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 and again, product? Most active influencers are coming from fashion, where they think of the perfume just as an extension of accessories and fashion, designer clothes. Let's get down to the numbers. We've been monitoring more than 152 mentions worldwide, which is basically conversations. The point is that we are not talking about countries, we are talking about, we've been targeting the English language, because I'm Italian, but when I'm online, I'm searching in English with great confidence. So when you do such kind of analysis, you target the language context, and then you see the breakdown of the countries that can be coming out. Curiosity, 8% of the overall conversation belongs to Italian users, which is quite a relevant slice of the cake if you think that 27% comes from United States and 19% is coming from United Kingdom. Marco will have maybe a quick chat on how this reflects the market quota later. But it's actually interesting to see that there are two big players, and the 28%, which is the green slice, is the long tail, which is basically made up of people belonging to a scattered number of countries, but they build a relevant part of the overall quota of conversations. Which is the channel? Okay, we have already been saying that. It's Instagram. Italy has a Instagram quota in the conversations about 57%, which is basically wider and greater than Instagram in the English language context conversations. Followed up by Twitter, and on third place for the international landscape we have YouTube, while in Italy maybe we have been more able to educate news magazine and newspapers online to talk about the topic. And so this is the third source of conversation of online audiences coming from Italy. But what's relevant, as I told before, is that most of the interaction do not come from end users. They come from market operators. So it's a very self-referring context where operators are talking to themselves, and it seems like we lack of engagement in the end consumer, which on the other hand is the greatest of the opportunity we have had. How many times is the niche compared to the fragrance, general fragrance searched online? These are 3 years of searches coming from Google data. As you can see, there are 3 spikes. 3 spikes relate to November and December. November, there is Black Friday, and December is the presents, of course. So everyone, the traffic is doubling, as you can see in the yellow line. And in comparison, the green line, which is this one, is not subject to peaks, but it's subject to terms that belong to fragrances instead of perfumes. So the yellow line is the ongoing searches where the cluster is perfumes and fragrances. Where is the niche fragrances in the searches? Where is the niche perfume? It's not even visible, because it's this red line that on a scale of 100% does not even get up to 1%. So it's really a minor share of interest in the searches of the users. The point is, how big is this yellow line? And how big is this red line? We're talking about 8.7 million searches about perfume in general a month done on Google, in comparison with 232,000, which is 2.6 searches relating to niche perfumery. So the general landscape is 8.7 million. The niche related is almost 2.6. But the point is that in this data, there is no brand. This is just the value, the attributes, which is niche, artistic, artisanal, and all the other terms we are using to identify the segment. What happens if we bring in the brands? These are the brands. The landscape changes because every month there are 3.6 searches from users that are intending to get close to a niche fragrance or a niche product. And it's not countable in comparison. Maybe it's over 25 millions, the number of searches dealing with mainstream perfume and fragrances. So the quota is a small share, yes, but it's relevant because there's anyway quite an interest about the topic. Let's look at the pattern. How do our users search? Well, only 3 out of 10 searches are really dealing with gender. For example, when something is dealing with gender, in 83% of the cases is talking about a for-men product, while 16% is a search which is addressing a for-women product. Unisex and other are just a minority share of 1%. Which means that 7 searches out of 10 are not considering value attributes. They do not deal with exclusivity. They do not mention in their search luxury, artistic. They just go to the brand and the product name. No, I'm sorry. This is very sensible. Okay, most searched categories are eau de cologne and aftershave. Actually, this is quite a big problem because when people search about perfume, is it trying to address the perfume as a product category, or is it trying to address perfume just as eau de parfum or a product typology? So this requires disambiguation. We could not, of course, do the exercise because we are no foreseeing. So the direct is eau de cologne and aftershave, right after second and third place. And the most desired product format, but is happening only on less than 1% of the searches, is something that is dealing with the samples, discovery kits, and gift sets. On the other hand, there is the most searched volumetric format, which is 100 milliliters. There's a gap between this, just a food for thoughts. Is this the only way to consider maybe a more convenient format, a volumetric format that can tear us apart from the very samples and let us try to experience the product without spending 200 euros for 100 milliliters? This is just a thing that requires further investigation. 1.4% of monthly searches are referring to a purchasing intent. What does it mean? It means that 65,000 searches every month are already ready to buy, are coming from users that are talking or mentioning purchase intentions, shopping intentions, discount seeking or sales opportunities, or price comparisons. And 1 out of 4 is looking for opinions. Even if we do not consider the search intent, when we go down to the need of getting guidance and reassurance, we have 82,000 users that every month are looking for hints, advice, guidance about who, what, why, which one, where do I, which is the best, or how do I. This is a breakdown. How to make perfume, how to apply cologne, how long does the perfume last, or even which is the best Creed cologne, or even where can I buy the brand or product XYZ? Which perfume should I wear? What perfume is right for me? Which perfume? These are all hints that reveal that people are asking questions. They have a need to know, and every brand manager in this room should consider, is my content strategy, am I delivering these kind of answers to the channels that I am interacting with? When I'm online, am I only talking about the product specs? Or am I talking how should you use the product, where you should spray it, in which condition? look, what is a niche fragrance? There's not even a clear definition. What is a niche perfume? It's not really a big part, but there's still people asking, what is that? As we said, there are 3.6 million searches every month happening. And how do they make up their mindset? They start from the brand. So let's put, for example, Nasomatto Black Afghano. While the funnel gets down, we have, for example, the association with brand and category. Sergioff Eau de Toilette, for example. These are real searches coming out. Brand and gender, Homage for men. Brand and purchase intent, Nasomatto online shop, for example. Brand, gender, and category. The further we go down, the more close we get to the intention to buy of our users. So what's the point in this? If we consider that every user goes through a journey, which is made up of moments, there is a moment where he is exploring. There is a moment where he is considering a subset of options. There is a moment where he is wanting to purchase, so he's wondering, where do I find it? How can I get a discount, or what's the best price? And then when he tried the experience, he might become an advocate, and he wants to interact with his peers and his friends and whatever, online and offline. These are the people we should address more. When they do not search by brand, they search by the values, which can be niche fragrances, for example, niche categories or niche and brand. But the overall quota is the 30% left, is dealing with all the other possible options. So it's in this case, even in this case, we have a very long tail of search queries. This is the topic I was talking about, the dictionaries. How many ways are to refer to the market? For example, in Italy, the most used is artistici, which is artistic objective. And worldwide, in English conversation, worldwide, luxury perfume is the most used mention when we are on social networks or online channels. What's the point? Look at this. The green bar for the worldwide context is the last bar for the Italian context, di lusso. The yellow bar for the Italian context, which is the top, is more or less the fourth bar of artistic perfumes. But moreover, do these all definitions tell the same thing? They try to identify a market, a product, and a bunch of values behind the product and concept and creativity. So why is there such a scattered way of defining the market and the context? This is an issue that has to be addressed very, very quickly. Is it possible to group the users that we have found online in clusters? The answer is actually it's very hard. And we've been just proposing four clusters, but they do not represent the whole of population. But the most interesting thing is that 90% of the conversation originates from shop managers, which are brands or influencers, but they really deal with the shop life. They manage the shop. They are brand. They produce. Fashion influencers have a small quota. The educated consumer has another small quota, and the sales hungry is the people who is not expert, but is he's scouting for occasions to buy and test the experience. Very quickly, shop managers, of course, we already said it. They promote their products. Maybe they picture the bottle, they picture their window, but they rely on a multitude of hashtags, and they just promote the product itself. The educated consumer is, maybe in my opinion, is the most interested part of the clusters. Mostly women. They pretend they are expert, but they are surely in love with the niche because they understand the values behind. They act basically on social networks where they get the possibility to review the fragrances, but not to be a YouTuber star, just to share their experience with their friends and their peers. And they tell people about the experience they have and how they wear it. I can do it. Sales-hungry people are the ones, which is maybe the most tricky part, because sales-hungry people are, of course, mentioning niche fragrances in a context where they would like to buy it, but looking for an opportunity to pay them less. And when you talk about discount, most of the time they end up with a leitmotif, which is equivalence, fakes, reverse engineered products. So why should I pay 10 times less if something that smells like brand XYZ? And this sparked quite a lot of conversation online, and maybe it's a trend that needs to be monitored. Okay, so these were the spontaneous conversation, the spontaneous searches. This is how they spontaneously behave. As I told you, the third pillar was the survey. We've been addressing the B2B and B2C community revolving around Esxence, and we have quite some interesting insights coming up. Basically, the survey started in April. There were made two versions, one for the B2C and one for the B2B context. We came up with more than 500 respondents, but 3 out of 4 were end users. They generally come from Italy. The gap is different between the B2B and B2C. We will see later. And the survey was conducted on a 4-dimensional way. So they were asked to say if they agree and how much they agree on the instances we were making to them. We grouped on a few topics, and we are going to scout for the B2C answers at the moment. So, which is the identikit of the B2C consumer online who has responded to the survey? There is no gap for female or male. It's 46 against 54. Most of their audience is ranging, 60%, is ranging from 36 to 56. So the biggest part declares to be quite an aged part. I'm in that age. They purchase niche fragrances as well as commercial fragrances, but they tend to prefer niche when they can because it gives them a major appeal and an emotional pleasure in comparison with commercial fragrances. They generally buy 2 to 3 number of products, niche perfumes in a year. There are cases where 25% say that they buy 4 to 7 products, and 21% say they buy even more than 7 products a year. So it's quite a relevant slice of the cake. They are willing to spend up to 200 euros in 40% of the cases, but 30% declares they would even be willing to spend more than 200 euros for a perfume. What's pivot in their mindset? The shop. The shop is actually the main distinctive factor between commercial perfumery and niche perfumery. And when we talk about the shop, we talk about the shop experience. We've been asking them, where would you expect to purchase an artistic perfume? Most of them, you can see it from these spikes, said that 95% said that they would expect to find it into an independent shop. There's little room for big chains in their mindset because they're not perceived as sustainable, suitable places for buying niche fragrances. 93%, in fact, look at these spikes. 93% is not expecting to find niche fragrances in chain shops. 49% imagines that they could even find niche products in unconventional type of shops. We're talking about fashion boutiques, designer shops, concept stores, which is not properly a specialized perfume shop. And on that chart, when we asked them, how do you think the world of artistic perfumery is different for commercial perfumery one, the most evident spike is I can find it only on selected number of stores. Even the distribution is perceived as a way of distinction from the commercial product. Shopping experience, which is the expectation about the shopping experience. 57% of consumers do not associate niche with luxury, and we were seeing it before. Moreover, they do not feel inhibited by entering a perfume shop dealing with niche. Only 33% admitted they felt inhibited. And when we dig down into that data, we find out that the dissatisfaction comes from feeling like being bound to purchase, 80%, or feeling like the staff was judgmental and unfriendly. In my opinion, these both refer to human conditions because, of course, judgmental and unfriendly stuff speaks for itself. But feeling bound to purchase maybe is I have not been welcomed friendly enough. So this is a point, and we will see the further we go that the shop assistant is the real rock star in the shop experience. So everything revolves around the relationship that gets installed between the end consumer and the shop assistant. Shopping experience about the influencing factors. Which are them? Which are the most relevant factors able to influence the purchase? Everyone says that guidance from the shop assistants is the main reason why they decide to buy. On the other hand, it's not so relevant the fact that I've been seeing videos and posts on social network. Maybe that helps me to get curious and get closer to the niche fragrance. But when it comes to deciding which one to buy, I might rely better on the advice and guidance from the shop assistant or my peers. I would never rely, you see the last column, I would never rely on e-commerce suggestions, just like you might also like. I would maybe try the fragrance on myself, yes, of course, but I would not rely on advertising on articles, on magazines. So the less relevant aspects actually are the advertising and the social network interaction. What about the expectation? 80% of the audience would buy a niche fragrance for a personal use without any special occasion. This is point because would you buy a present where it is so niche and so unknown in a positive way that your guest or your loved one might not even recognize the value behind the product? That's the point. But the further we go, individuality comes as the main part of the experience. So every time I buy the fragrance, mostly it's for me and it's for my personal pleasure. 97% of the user expect to find competent, professional, and well-prepared personnel when they enter in the shop. And 92% declares that they expect tailored consultancy to identify their own olfactory code. There is one line, the third column, which is very important to me, which is staff remembers my taste and my preferences. There's nothing more personal, maybe, than this kind of relationship. I get in contact, I try the product, maybe I do the test on the olfactory test, and when I come back, I expect even to be recognized, and maybe the same person recognizes me and remembers, and we start the discussion from the point that we have left. 88% expects free samples. But actually, that's the point that comes up. That maybe it's the only way to try a fragrance, which is so hard to find or so rarely distributed. So you would not, even for the price, you would not even buy it blindly. You would either get suggestion from your peers or your friends, or even you would have tried it before because it was a free sample from a previous experience. And 85% would welcome an invitation to a workshop or an event organized in shop. This is key, and it's key even in the B2B survey results. Very few people declared that they recently purchased online, 35%. But what comes out is that of all those people who bought online, the most mentioned online perfumery shop is Notino, and the most mentioned purchased brand, which is not actually the most popular necessarily, but is Creed. And the frequent expectation about e-commerce experience, what's the difference between in-store experience? They seek protection from fakes and scams. We were talking about the alternative products or reverse engineered products, which is 92% of the quota. 91% comes and says that they expect to find quick access to the terms and conditions. This is transparency. 82% says that I need a transparent customer care service, maybe on a dedicated phone line or on a dedicated live chat. All these three, they do not deal with the wide range of the e-commerce. They do not deal with special prices. They deal with factors that regard being safe, protected from fakes and scams, feeling in a transparent negotiation, and feeling taken care of. So goes back to relationship, and maybe this is a way that online users expect to live the same experience they have in the shop on the digital channels. But digital channels has a physical limitation and different opportunities. So there is a bound, a line where one experience cannot become the other experience. And this may be the line that we should try to exploit more when it comes to communication, when it comes to strategies about the shop experience. Customization versus exclusivity. This comes up very often. When people, not expert people, think about niche, they think it's a synonymous of tailor-made, made to measure. Maybe they think there is an alchemist in front of them that is building the fragrance. That is not. But people also think and write about this. What they are really aware is that the entry point, which is fun and engaging to their opinion, is the olfactory test. The entry point is believed to be experienceable only on physical shops, where I would take a test, and none of them would expect to have it online or have it through an app or have it maybe on some sort of simulation through a newspaper magazine. But as we were saying, most of them expect to be welcomed and remembered by the shop assistants. And more than 80% of them find that the test has been a pleasure experience, and they were willing to testify it to their friends and peers. What's the role of the nose in all these matter? Well, it's actually a split. Some of them say it's relevant. Some of them say that it's not. But when you go deep, 88% say that they were able to mention a brand name or a nose. But if you go and see what they answered, you see a lot of confusion. The brand name of the nose gets confused with the product name or the brand name, and the brand name gets confused with the nose. So it's very foggy scenario. Interesting. Of all the mentions brand, which is more or less 170, there is a brand which is mentioned 1 out of 3 times. And the second brand in popularity in these mentions is present in 12% of the answers. And what's relevant is the first 10 brands share the 83% of total awareness in these mentions. So we have a long tail of brands which are almost very few mentioned, and they are very huge in number. Sustainability does not seem to be a matter or a topic that is very engaging to them. Even because when they think about sustainability, they call in place recyclability of the packaging, respect for crops, farming and materials, natural raw materials, or working conditions to be respected by the brands and the employees. But as the B2B said, it's not a very active topic for conversation at the moment. Let's go to the B2B and close it quickly. It's quite similar, the insights we get. There is no split between men and female for the professional survey. They are quite younger than the audience that buys. They range from 36 to 55. They even both wear niche commercial fragrances, but if they can, they prefer niche to commercial. They purchase a higher number of units every year, 4 to 6 or even 7 units maybe. And they are willing to spend more than 200 euros with more opening. We've been asking them, which are the trends you see in the market? 67% of them said we see a growth. I'm expecting growth in this market. 20% said it's going to be a static growth, and 10% is expecting a contraction. 71% of them is more inclined in investing in workshop and events to happen inside the store, but only 45% of them is really taking action. So only 45% is really organizing workshop around niche perfumery in their walls. What scares them? 2 are the main drivers of fear in this very moment. It's the increase of the number of brands and it's the lack of culture and awareness in the end consumer. Because lack of culture makes it very hard for them to distinguish between niche fragrances and commercial fragrances. When they think about promotion, how do they relate? They look at word of mouth as one of the main drivers. 90% of them believes that it's an important driver for awareness. So people having positive experiences are more willing to talk about and bring other people to the shop. Social media is believed to be one efficient way of communicating because it simplifies the relationship. 65% of the B2B respondents do use them on a regular daily basis, and they think it's a way to amplify and get known in a very short time. Influencers are looked as they are able to attract new, curious audiences to the world, and it's quite in contrast with what B2C respondents say. And they say, okay, I might be attracted by a video post, but I'm not deciding which one to buy based on an influencer suggestion. Talking about the content, which are the main topics they would like to communicate, or they think it's very important to communicate. They stated in this order: how the brand and fragrances were born, illustrating and storytelling the creative process of the nose, and then promoting innovativity and creativity as pillars of the brand's project. In my opinion, humble opinion, it's the way back. It should be promoting the innovativity and creativity that leads to illustrating the storytelling and the creative process. And maybe the people are, if they are interested to get to know the history of the brand, is because they already bought your story, your product, and your values. Persistency is believed to be maybe one of the most interesting factors to stress on negotiations or maybe even to develop content, because persistency is known to be the lever to attract new audience if compared to the commercial fragrances persistency. Sustainability, as we were saying, it's not a topic, it's moderately interesting, so only 40% of them said that clients would be very interested in hearing such kind of content or story. So, shops. As we were saying, the shop is believed to be neither luxurious nor minimalist. There's a split between them. What's very clear is the role of the staff. Staff is very important for services, but is very important because it requires training about the product and even consultancy about how a brand or a store promotes himself on digital channels. This goes back to the 93% of the bottle in the picture, and this goes back to the fact that 90% of the conversations are spanning from operators of the market. 70% of their turnover is related to niche. They, as we were saying, they maybe a little overestimate the number of products that every client would buy every year, and the fact that they are willing to spend even 200 or more than 200 euros is coming from the fact that they are inside the market, they are operators. The point is that 47% of them does not make use of olfactory tests in their in-shop experience, and 21% didn't even know that they existed. So this is a point. If the B2C is telling us the olfactory test is an entry point for turning curiosity into product closeness, then we might consider that we might address a little bit this topic. I'm closing. I have 5 golden rules that I would like to put on the table for you. The first is, from the insights we gather, there is no difference between how the age is influencing the kind of answers we get. Millennials responded just like the others, and they do not show great affinity toward the touch points. But the point is that for niche perfumery, the physical experience is much more relevant than the digital one. So ignoring it will be a lack or an occasion missed, because people are, of course, caring about the perception of the experience they have in the store when they visit the store. This leads us to tell that the consumer expect to find niche fragrances in independent shops instead of generic shops. And when they do enter, they do not really relate to a luxury experience. They relate to an individual experience, where the me, as Silvio says, the me gets in place. And it's not you trying to sell me a status, a brand, or a product. It's you trying to understand my olfactory code and decipher it to give me the best product you might have in store at the moment. And this comes to the fact that consumers are seeking an experience where individuality is central. And there is no way to put this on digital. You are bound to go to the in-shop experience to a certain point. Consumers know that olfactory test is an entry point, and they find it useful and engaging. Okay, then we should stress the fact that this is the turnkey to get them closer and curious, and maybe to convince them to enter the door of the shop. Even because it cannot be done online. So this is the distinguishing factor from the online experiences. Professionality, advice, and competence is what people are looking for when they relate to a shop assistant. Okay, retailers need to believe more and more that professional preparation is a necessity of their staff. And finally, being in a context where the consumers are seeking exclusivity, social networks are not able to influence their final decision about which product to buy, but they may be useful to arouse curiosity. So this goes back to word of mouth. Word of mouth is possible if the experience is positive. And the more we start working on the base, which is in the 4 pillars, the educated customer is not the influencer. The influencer is, of course, important, but we need to stress from the base this kind of change. And maybe this is the good way to start a movement and start spreading a culture, not only product specs and prices. Thank you very much.
Perfect timing, bravo Marco, that's perfect. So I would like to say you that when we decided to make this analysis is in order to quantize what we are speaking about since a long time. So what we are speaking about. So to me, there is not so many information that was surprising, was completely expected sometimes, but I think that it's very important to be sure to have the knowledge of what we have to work on in order to improve and to make better. So now I ask it kindly to Marco Ricchetti to have some comments about that, then Chiara, and then because they are more, let me say, analytics, techniques, and a scientific approach, if you want, and then Karen substituting partially also Sarah, that sent once again their wishes to us a few seconds ago. And he would like to be with us, but Karen had the role to substitute and to speak about. And because what's about Sarah and Karen? They are people. First of all, they are French guys living American guys living in France. So it's a mixture of culture that should be very helpful. Also commenting some data that Marco kindly showed to us, and they have a good relationship with a lot of people in our market. So they know really inside what is. Creators, operators, institutions, etc. So please, Marco, it's your turn.
Thank you, Silvio, for inviting me to discuss the study. Well, I found the study super interesting with a huge number of points to discuss and to comment. I will try to limit myself to just 3 or 4 very short points. We don't have the time to stay here up to the night. I think so. Do we have? No? So, okay. But even... okay. So, but to make things even more difficult, before entering in the comments of the key points, I would like to make a general issue here. Well, I'm very happy about one point. In a few months' time, we had, in my brief experience about fragrances, 2 main attempts to understand better this sector as an industry, or well, as a business, you know. not just as a cultural topic. We got last September, and this is the timing of my contact with Silvio Levi, with the Fragrance Observatory that we made for the trade fair. It was mostly about providing a framework in terms of the size of the sector, very basic information. How many companies, how the companies are organized at European level, the size of the companies, the size of the business, these type of things. And for the first time, we got a substantially an information about the size based on numbers, based on the research. And now we have, from a different viewpoint, another major study on this, which is about a definition of the markets in terms of behavior of operators and behavior of consumers. We will have in September another observatory with Fragrance. So there is a movement, some sort of a new movement about the knowledge about this industry. Let's make, from my point of view, a huge difference, because you have, if you want to have a market, you need information. A market is not only selling and buying. It's well, I'm an economist. In the economic theory, a market is an institution that needs to have rules and information as basic way to live, to be in a real market. Well, so that's the first general question. The first general point. There is a new start from this point of view within a sector which is, which has been established since at least, we have the 11th edition of Esxence, right? And even more older, more than 20 years years of activity and trade fairs. Well, so that's the first point. Very super interesting and promising most of all. Let's say something about the content. I took some note while Marco was talking. First, I got I do say in English, a confirmation about some number we calculated with the Pietribiasi Observatory. And it's about the share of this animal. We don't know exactly how to call it. Marco was saying the scattered partner of definition about this sector, because he found that let's call it niche market, niche perfumery or artistic perfumery, is about 2.6% of the total web searches, right? Well, this number is incredibly close to the number we found in terms of the percentage of sales of the niche or artistic perfumery out of the total global perfumery market. We calculated something as it was 1.3 billion euro out of 70, so it's around 1.8% that were only the European brands. So you can add just a bit and you get very easily to the 2.6. So great, this is a strong confirmation. And also a very similar percentage about the opinions, the climate of opinions about the growth of the sector. You were about 60 and something. We found a bit more, but maybe it was 1 year ago. And you know that things are not going very well for the European economy nowadays. So that's the first comment. It confirms the figures, and so it say that both studies as well-grounded, I would say. A second comment is about different, let's say, importance of the countries within of the different countries within this market. And I know we already discussed with Marco that there are some language issues. It depends on the language you are being looking for when calculating the searches. You know, it is in English and Italian, not in French, etc. But however, we see something interesting there. For example, if I compare the percentage of searches about artistic fragrances, I see that 24 point something percent comes from the US. It compares very well with the percentage of US out of the total GNP. Okay, so this is more or less the same weight than the economic weight of the country. If I look to France, for example, again, we are more or less on par, 3 point something percent of searches versus 4% of the weight out of the global GDP. But then if we go in the UK, we found that searches are 19% of the global searches, while UK account only for 3.2% of the global economy. And what is even more interesting is that Italy has 8% of the searches, while Italy weighs 3.4% on the global GDP. So it means that for Italy, Italy has a very strong specialization, let's say, in this market. We don't find in the first 5 or 6 countries, Spain, for example, Germany, maybe depend on the language, I know, but this tells us something. If we are able to copy and paste, let's say, the same importance of artistic fragrances that we have in Italy, in Germany and in Spain, we can get more or less to almost double the sales. So we don't need to expand the share of artistic fragrances within a specific country. Why? Because we could lose the exclusivity factor that has been so well underlined by Marco. We can clone it in other countries. This can be a very interesting point and a strategy. So we need to increase the penetration in other countries, in the countries where the penetration is very low, instead of trying to increase the penetration in countries where the artistic fragrances are already well known. Second point is about the searches. Again, Marco said that most of the searches are about how to buy, what to buy, price, discounts, and practical advice. These were the main point. And most of all, about brands, right? Well, this tells us that this is a market which is not so well developed, is in an infant situation, you know. In an infant stage of development is something that happened also in the fashion business. You start at the beginning to be interested in just in brands, and only in the second stage you can get to have more interest in values and other issues. Well, a third point, so that's another great information. We need to develop more the awareness about the values of the sector. One of the points is we need a name. I know that Marco has good ideas about what can be the next name. I want to take over his idea. But that's a critical point. If we don't, if we can't frame the values of what is the meaning of the product we are selling, there will be no sector at all. Another couple of points. One is about the conversations. Here the key comment is there are no conversation. That's very clear. 90% of conversation come from retailers mainly that are just showing up the bottles or the windows. And this is another critical point. We are in a cultural industry, right? The product, the material component of the product is limited. Is very similar to fashion in a way. And as it was demonstrated by the survey, we are also in a sector where products are experience goods, not search goods. I don't want to make you a lecture about experience good and search good, but when you are in a cultural industry and you're selling experience good, you need conversation. The information to the consumer cannot be given by the direct communication from the brand to the consumer. Information is mostly useful when it is indirect. So there are what we call now influencer, but they can be the retailer, and apparently they are, the specialized press, the peers. That's typical in the model of experience good. You know that in English you have a difference between advertising and publicity. We need more publicity and less advertising in this industry. But apparently we don't have them. Maybe it's only about internet, I don't know. But if you don't have this halo, let's call it, this type of conversation, you cannot communicate. You cannot have a transfer of information. So the key element, the key question here is who can play the role of driver in this conversation? Can be the internet, the influencer, the press, or maybe apparently, if you have to bet something put some money on my cent on the table, is about the retailers. But we need a different kind of retailer. That are not just showing the bottles on Instagram. So we need to inject some change in the retailing system. Well, last point. It's about something I'm very interested in, and it is the sustainability issue, which is a general trend, right? Especially in the fashion business. No one can miss to talk about sustainability in the fashion business. Apparently, it's not an issue, and this is surprising. It's something that goes on our skin, for example. So I would expect more debate on this, and from the answer to the questionnaire you have been showing us, apparently those that talk about sustainability do not exactly know what they are talking about. It's about natural substances. You know that there is, it could be a disaster for nature and for biodiversity if we should go back to natural components in perfumes. So this is another very important driver which is here among us and will stay for next years, and sooner or later will enter very strongly also in these markets, but is a topic that apparently has not entered the discussion in this sector. So this is another very critical point. So first, there is a new start about talking about the sector as a real business. We need more identity for the industry, even a name. Third, there is the need to drive conversation. Maybe the role is from the retailers. And last but not least, this issue about sustainability can be very, very important. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marco. Clap. Just for your information, Esxence is dedicating also a workshop to German markets. So if you want to come in a deeper, Bodo Kuberts will have a workshop exactly on what is going on in German market for niche perfumery. The other point, I think I list only a few points that probably Chiara will be so kind to cover partially, and that this is a young market. Despite the age of some brands, is a young market.
That is only 15% of the total audience.
Just a second, and then the other point is, so it's young, there is a wall, and then probably Chiara will speak about the wall.
Yeah.
And the other point is, remember we are every time speaking about the difference between excellence and luxury. So I think it's a very important point. So I think that, you know that Esxence name is coming from the scent of excellence. You know? So we are speaking about excellence. Excellence is not necessarily luxury. And other point is regarding the ecological aspect, correctly Marco quote something. Yesterday during the Experience Lab there was some workshop and discussion about that. And it was very interesting how some cosmetic company in our field are covering the aspect of no usage of water, eco packaging, etc. Probably more committed than in our sector. And on the other side, naturals, non-naturals will take a long time, but being myself a chemist, I used to say, remember that sometimes natural identics made by synthesis, but are completely identical to a natural component or structure, are more safe for our environment than to extract something so natural. So you can have two simple bricks coming from natural sources, putting together, you get a wonderful ingredients that is a smelling ingredient, but it takes less energy, less water, less pollution, etc., and you get exactly the same natural molecules. So that is very important sometimes to know. Anyway, but that is too long, and it needs another workshop. So Chiara, welcome.
Okay. My first point regards the younger cluster of people of the survey, because 60% of the respondents have more than 36 years, and the people with age less than 35 is only 15%. Maybe this is not the target cluster for niche, but of course it must be maintained, and could be developed. It could be an opportunity. When we are talking about people with less than 35 years old, we are talking about millennials, so people who are always online, really engaged, people who expect to have contact with brand, and maybe to have a role in co-creation also with brand. So what is relevant for brand and perfumery shops is they need to engage this kind of cluster. Before, we talk about the price of niche, and we could think that maybe it can be an obstacle to younger people. But this is not a real problem, because as Marco told before, discovery kits, free sample could be a good way to intercept the taste of this cluster and their habits. And in any case, one important characteristic of millennials is the fact that they save money. They spend less frequently, and they save money for expensive goods that they love. So money is not a problem for the young cluster. This is the first point in regards customer. The other second point regards always customers, and regards what is the perceived distinctive factor between niche and masstige. From the survey, we had this result that 65% of people think that a niche creates more emotional pleasure. So it's not about distinguish themselves, but it's all about pleasure. Pleasure, of course, of the product, but also pleasure of the choice. Because when we ask people who tried olfactory tests if they find it useful, they said, of course, that it was useful, but it was also fun. 80% of people thought that olfactory test was fun. So when customers buy niche, they don't buy the product only, but also the experience of choose, because also the experience of choose drive a pleasure. And this creates an important factor, because the perfumery shops may shift from a place in which you can buy a product to a place in which you can discover new things, find your olfactory signature, and you can entertain yourself. So the shops must have an open door policy, for an example, and must create emotionality in all the activities. And also shop assistants and shop owners need to shift to sell products, to sell an experience. This is the point from the customer point of view.
I have to say also that I want to say there will be also a workshop about American market there. So just to come also in Anglo-Saxon after this afternoon. Okay. And about the price and discovery kit, you have to consider that in more markets, so especially, for example, in China today, that is so important. So, you know, there is some services now expressly for sales from Hong Kong to China. No, the services, they are most systems. They sell on the other side of the frontier, you know, some samples with some codes, and that will let them, the Chinese later on, to place an order of the finished product. But that is also quite common. On the other side, we have some problem all around the world about how many people is making sampling in improper manner. So the fact that they fill themselves the samples and not supplied directly by the company, and that is one of the topics of what the relationship between the company and the distributor and the retailers supplying a proper amount of samples that let the people to discover. The other point, and moreover, is olfactory test. I was very often smiling when I see the data, because everyone is speaking about olfactory test, but what is the definition? What is an olfactory test? Because some are doing it in a proper manner. Someone is convinced that if I let you to smell a vetiver and a sandal is more than enough. Absolutely not. So olfactory test on my side is to let the people approach the fragrances emotionally and not technically. We don't need sommelier or perfumes. We don't need people that is coming in the store telling you, oh, let me smell something containing ambergris. How many of them never smell an ambergris in their life? They don't know it at all. What does it mean? So the point is, why don't you approach the perfume? And that is an educational component. So it's a matter of fact that people have to approach the fragrances simply listening. What is the message I get? The same as looking to a photograph, the same as looking to a sculpture or listening to music. No one asked to Kandinsky, sorry, it's my fault. No one, because Marco, I have to leave us, so that is the only reason for the sound. So when you want, you can leave us. What is the reason for you want to know what is inside before to know if you love it or not? So it's a stupid concept. So we have to downloading in the sense that we have to let the people invite in our shop, letting them to have an experience, considering that the exclusivity is the aspect of the role of a niche store. That is, what is the aim? To let potentially any single customer leave the shop with a different fragrance. So it's a magic business based on slow mover, not bestsellers. In the same time, we are discovering the bestseller that will supply the masstige in the future. So because we are testing trends, sometimes happen. So I have once to quote Creed, because Creed was one incredibly quoted in that. And, you know, there was a strange phenomenon that I'm also one of the Creed distributors in the world, and there is a fragrance that is Aventus. Aventus became, incidentally, a bestseller worldwide. a lot of us techniques or specialists can still answer a question. The question is why? I don't know, sincerely. We can understand the reason why, but it's 10 years that this fragrance is the bestseller worldwide in, if you want, borderline or in the niche, but it's very important. So that creates a trend. You can count the number of copies of Aventus, but Aventus burn in the niche market, for sure. And that is something that is feeding the business. Moreover, we have to help people to make olfactory tests. That means let the people discover the emotional component of fragrances. And that is not so simple. So we have not to teach, we have to give them tools in order to make it in a simple manner, to let the people not to be confused and to understand better. What was the thing I noted the most in that is when you ask, and Marco quoted it, you ask the people, you know, especially to people that already knows our market, you know, can you quote me some brands? And the majority of them mix together brand, fragrance name, noses. You ask them, tell me the name of a nose, and they quote you the brand name. So there is a huge confusion in that because they're supposed to know something they really don't know exactly, deeply, and they have to study a little more. There is a gap between what a distributor or a brand is communicating and what the retailer is capable to communicate to the final clients. Very often the final clients know much more than the retailer because they study on the net. So there is some gap in that. So we have to share better the experience, the emotional experience. So that I think is very important. And the pleasure in the choice is very interesting because pleasure is very important in our market. We have to conquer people. Then conquer people in the sense that they must feel themselves as the decision maker. They made a choice, they celebrate a marriage between the fragrance themselves. And they will be proud of because they want people will tell them what the good fragrance are you, because represent your spirit. That is so important. On the other side, I quoted the wall. That is, I think, the summary of everything we are speaking about. What is the wall? We realize that when you listen outside the wall, people don't know really what is our market. When they, for whatever reason, discover it, they cross the wall, come in, and they never leave it. So we have a loyalty that is incredible. They never leave. They stay inside the wall. The point is, we speak about between us inside the wall, and we understand each other. But we are not letting the other people easily to understand what is inside the wall. So I think that I'm so happy for what we made, and the team, I thank so much all the team for that, because we analyze more things. It's quite evident, but we have to understand and to realize that we have a really important aim, is to let the people, let the shop, let the experience be easier, and letting the people to approach our creation exactly as when you come in a gallery. You don't need to study everything about the author. You stop in front of something because you love it. When you love it, when you buy the poster, then you study something. But please, it's like a wine. Don't ask before what is the grapes or something, but you ask it when you love the wine, because if the wine is awful, what does it mean? There is a lot of tests, that sometimes it's happening in the United States, letting the people taste this wine is coming from California. And they told you, wow, great. And then the same, this is coming from Minnesota. Wow, I don't like it. But it's the same wine, because the conditioning sometimes happen. So let the people simply to tell you if they like or don't like. Don't tell them it's making by someone or something else. Then the discovery is the pleasure, as Chiara told. The pleasure of discovery is to understand what you choose. What is the added value? And so the person in the shop must know that. But please don't tell them everything before then. And don't tell them what they have to smell. Please don't do it. Let them to smell and to tell them what they get. If there is an overlapping with what you know about the fragrance, wonderful. If not, okay, there is some problem. But anyway, don't force people to read in a fragrance what they don't read in it, because that is not what you made with a piece of art. So I thank all of you. I thank all the speakers there for what we. But now is the turn of Karen and the comment about the expert in the sector.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I approached the study from the viewpoint of a retailer, a buyer, a brand developer. That's my background. So my viewpoint is a little bit different. But what we know is that globally, fragrance had growth of about 5% last year. This is something I read in the BW magazines that are laying all over the show today. But that's 5% global for the entire category of fragrance. But we know from other studies, like from NPD, that niche, artisan, whatever we want to call it, is growing faster. So this is a really good sign for us, because on the one hand, it also means that the consumer is turning away from the mainstream, and they're looking for an alternative. And they're looking for the alternative because niche, artisan has the innovation and the creativity, and it's authentic. We clearly have an issue with clarifying our term. So this is something we talked about last night at dinner. We kind of had our own brainstorming, and we did come up with Marco came up with a term that actually has been used in beauty and skincare. So I'm going to throw it out, and then you can think about it while I'm telling you the rest of what I have to say, and then we can take your comments during the question and answer. And the term was indie, because you see a lot of beauty brands talking about independent brands, indie beauty. Is niche this? Is this similar? Because these are brands that are on their own. They're not owned by conglomerates. They are doing their own development. It's just a thought. We can talk about it. But we definitely need to decide and move forward so we can categorize what is happening with the sales and the business, and what direction are we going. So clearly we have an opportunity to harness the power of journalists, bloggers, and vloggers to share a lot of information with the public. Because when you see the slide that he put up there with all the questions of what people are searching for, it's 82,000 searches a month. Okay, so people are still confused about where do I put my fragrance, how do I put my fragrance, when do I reapply my fragrance, how do I pick a fragrance? So there's still confusion out there. There's still people that need guidance. And it's actually a good thing, and it's an opportunity, because, you know, if you're a vlogger, do you have a video explaining this from your point of view? Because you've got your audience, you say it in your way, and then another vlogger from a different country, from a different viewpoint, will explain it their way, but it gets the word out to your public. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. And I know that Sarah would, who's not here, she would really stand in arm with me on this point. So the thing with digital content is that it lives. So if you're looking for something, you can find it. You know, years ago when we had magazines, you read it that month, it was hard to find it again. It's not the case anymore, because if you can Google anything, basically. I've Googled a lot of things that I had no idea how to do, and you go to Google and you get it. So it lives, it's there. Now when we think about the consumer, what is the consumer looking for? And again, I've read some studies recently, and it was definitely validated by this study that has been done, that people are looking for gender fluid, they're looking for gender neutral, they're both in the scent and in the packaging. They're also looking for something that's mood boosting, which, to Chiara's point, it's about well-being, it's about feeling better, it's about using the fragrance when it's at different times. Because I think so much about my past, I did work a lot with big brands. And when you look at the way the marketing is, fragrance is typically sold for one purpose, to seduce, okay? I mean, do we not agree? You've either got a guy jumping out of the ocean, or you've got a woman rolling around on a carpet, or basically, okay? So at what point does that correspond to our lives? It's not reality after, well, maybe for some, but for most of us, it's not. So what fragrance do you wear when you're going on a picnic, when you're going to work, when you pick up your kids from school, when you're doing other things in your life, when you're not seducing someone, okay? So do we not wear fragrance when we're doing other activities? This is the question. Ciao. Thank you, Marco. So scent, the good thing with niche is that scent, the consumer that comes to niche, it's more about the scent itself. It's not about the advertising and the campaign and the spokesmodel. It's about the fragrance itself. And they're looking for authenticity, the values, the quality, the ingredients, the like he said, the tenacity, something that is uniquely yours. And the thing with the customization, we talked about this last night too. I think there's a lot of confusion in terms of, I want a custom fragrance, I want a personalized fragrance. So to me, this goes back to some of the information that's shared with customers, because I would assume that almost every fragrance at this show has been crafted in a way that it develops on the skin individually. So it smells one way on me, it smells differently on her, it smells differently on you. So that's personal, that's custom. But I think that, we can't be customizing fragrances for every consumer in the way of mixing a fragrance, if that's what they think it is. But what we can customize, and this again goes to the study and what Chiara was also saying, is the in-store experience. So I think about other retailers and things that they do, other industries, and you know who does it? I live in Paris. What has been done pretty well right now are the high-end chocolate shops. So you go in and you make one purchase. It doesn't matter if it's €5 or 50. They put you in their CRM customer base, and they, more than anyone, are using mobile messaging, which is effective because it's always about content, about news about what's happening in the store, about a new product, about a promotion. They always do this. Then I get things sent to my house that are specific to a specific location. Come in this store, we're waiting for you, we have a special offer. So these are things that I think we can look at as case studies or best practices that could be applied to our industry. Moving on. The other thing is that, as we were saying, the customer is now an expert because they're Googling, they're looking online, they're getting so much information before they even walk in the store. So what compels them to go in the store? Magic, the thrill of the wow, okay? That's what I would call it, the thrill of the wow. So otherwise you stay home and you can just order it online. But you want to go in and have an experience where you're greeted, you have something that's fun, it's efficient, it's interactive, and I hate to say it, but it's Instagrammable, okay? It has to be Instagrammable, because Everyone's taking a selfie. You put your hashtag out there, and then what are they doing? User-generated content that's advertising for you. No? I think that lately I've been to a couple of stores that did some very interesting in-store discoveries. So it's about going on a scent journey, seeing maybe one, they had like a little video screen for each fragrance with text about what inspired them to create this brand, and then with like a little cone that you could smell. So yes, you could watch the video at home. Yes, you could hear the text, but you can't smell the fragrance. So you've got to go in and have that experience. And that's driving people to store. So very, very important to get the customer in, but when they're in, indeed, if you don't have the staff that knows as much as the customer, that's going to be a problem. So they have to know more than the consumer. So staff has to be educated. They have to have the right tools. They have to be customer-centric. They have to know about customer service, giving customer service. They want to be nice people that are willing to go through a lot of presentation and not get discouraged at the end of the day. They need to be welcoming, competent and confident. These are things that are said over and over again. So think about it in your own life. If you go to buy a washing machine or a computer and you go in the store and you feel that you know more than the person that's there, well then why did I even come? I need advice. This is what I'm here for. So that's something that we have to constantly ask ourselves. Are we giving what we want ourselves? I'm going to close with 2 points. One, and it goes back to so much of what was in the study, is, again, how do we engage the customer online? Because on digital, we want to engage them with the authenticity. So what are the values of the brand? This is something that it's come up over and over that we're not talking about. We're showing bottles, we're talking about notes, but we're not talking about the values of the brand. And it has to come from the heart. It has to be real. The story, the message, and then if you have a brand ambassador, please make it someone that loves the brand, because we can all see, and you know it, everyone in this room knows, if you've seen an influencer or a key opinion leader that you know that they're just taking a paycheck, that they could care less about the brand, does it compel you to buy the product? Does it influence you? It influences me in a negative way. So if you have someone that's going to be your ambassador, make it someone who loves the brand, it comes from the heart, they really are a good representative, an authentic representative of your product. The thought that I really want to leave you with, and this is something that I've been thinking about for a long time, is that in the fragrance world, often what you see with the big brands is that everyone wants to steal market share from each other. L'Oreal has this percent, and LVMH has this percent, and Coty has this percent, so how do I steal market share? But that's really not going to get us anywhere. What we need to do is grow the fragrance pie so it's bigger for everyone. So the only way to do that is really to grow the users, because if we've got people that are buying 5, 7 fragrances a year, we can't really expect them to buy more. But we know there's a lot of people that buy none. So how are we going to engage them? And I think that this can go back to the idea of the education, of the diagnostic, of the olfactory test, and getting people involved, getting them into the idea of the mood boosting, of the well-being, and growing the whole fragrance pie. That's my point. Yes, Sarah Colton was not able to be here today, so I just want to read to you what she wrote last night. So she commented on the growth of artisan niche fragrance, that the superlative growth of artisan niche fragrance category should not surprise any of us, because we all know that increasingly people of all ages and around the world want what we have. That is, a life that feels real and full of meaning, purpose, and creativity. A life in which they can find their places as unique individuals, contributing to a greater community in which innovators and risk takers are valued and encouraged. This is who we are. This is the niche fragrance community. Although I'm not personally with you today, in my imagination, I look around the room and the entire Esxence, Essencional experience. I imagine your faces, old friends and new. I'm inspired by your power, and I see and feel this community. The values of Esxence and Essencional are to search for and bring together the best and brightest elements of our community to highlight, nurture, share, and augment it. Our talents and callings are diverse, creating, composing, packaging, communicating, selling, researching, and wearing fragrances. Our passion for the amazing power fragrances is the force that unites us. As a niche fragrance journalist, it is my job and my privilege to serve this community. My goal is to use my talents as a teacher and storyteller to bring together different elements of the whole and to share the information and inspiration I have found through my perfume experiences. I love the mutual support I feel among my fellow perfume journalists and other industry professionals. As the water beneath any of our boats rises or falls, it rises or falls in exact proportion beneath all of our boats. We're in this together.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to everyone, to the team, and that is the first step of Essencional, and we do love to come in deeper details, but simply helping everyone in order to be better. I have only to remind to all of you a statistical concept that I did. Also, if you have two statistics, very skilled people around me. After the Second War, the number of people that approached the fragrance was very limited. From Second War to now, there was a geometrical increase of proposition of perfume. So the population that is using a fragrance items is enormous. And that is that led any niche, but in any sector, to live, because every day there is someone that tested the mass market, the masstige, and then land in the niche. So it's obvious. So when I see that everyone is speaking about a niche is growing up, and the population is growing up, simply. And so as soon as we represent ideally the 2% on the business point of view, that's fine, but a very important point that Marco underlined before is that we reach the 2% in few countries. As soon as we will develop the network of retailers worldwide, as soon as we get the 2% in any country, we are speaking about billions of turnovers. So the point is not to squeeze some country that reach the 2% and reach the 4%. The point is to let any single country to reach the 2%. As soon as every year, since the beginning, I told every year to the journalists, what is our aim? To reach the 2% worldwide. We are very far. And that is a huge, huge opportunity of investment, opportunities. And we gave, I used the word opportunities last year because we gave a lot of opportunity to young noses, to packaging, we discover, so it's no more the time of poor and good. We have also to be excellent in any single aspect of our proposition. Packaging, creation of fragrances, stories, currency, and whatever you want. And involvement. And involvement probably will be in the next word next year. So we need to involve people because we have simply to let the people to discover us. Because when they discover us, we never lose them. Thank you so much to everyone. Obviously, we are open to any question the public would like to place to us. On numbers, on trends, whatever you want. You're so positive. No question. Exhausted.
I have a question for Marco. So about the fact that most of the people prefer to buy in stores. And when you were doing your survey, did you know where the people are from? Because I think that would kind of affect the
I beg your
factor.
pardon. I cannot hear you. Can you speak a little
sorry.
bit?
So I was wondering if you knew where the people are from, the ones who are answering the survey, because most of them said that they would buy in store. But how about people who are from smaller places? Do they travel to buy, or is there an information you could access to?
Well, as far as nationality, the biggest part comes from Italy, and only a 4% on the B2C survey answered that they come from other countries. And about the proximity, if they're willing to travel and move, there is no clear point on this, because we've been scouting for the nationalities. But what is, in my opinion, a direct consequence of what we saw in the mentions is that provided that people are considering the scattered availability of product and distribution, it's bound for the fact that to experience the test, you must go to an online store. So if you want to buy fragrances, you need to be able and willing to move. Last night we were having dinner together, and I found a lot of resemblances with the music market and vinyl collections. Vinyl lovers do travel and do find a lot of pleasure in the research, in finding out on thrift stores or whatever, those music that fits their taste. And as Karen was saying, I mean, the key is the fact that if you want to find the alternative to mainstream, you must move and wander around yourself. So it's not a clear statement, but it's quite hidden in the answers we got from the B2C survey so far.
Hi. My question is if we will grow distribution of niche and grow the amount of the consumer, will niche become mainstream? So we will lose it?
I guess no. In the sense, I think that a niche, as in any market, is a discovery sector where you have a high risk. So 1 on 10 will succeed probably. So how many spotlight we are presented today will survive in the next 5 years? I don't know. I do hope some of them are proposing something that will be so interesting that the other one will follow.
Yeah.
So I think that staying inside the 2%, but what is very important on the economical point of view, to give the opportunity to any single company to reach break-even and to gain money. So fortunately, up to now, we was fed by crazy people that made something that was completely absurd. But some of them succeed. Yeah. And a few of them that succeed give us a huge opportunity. I used to say, I can quote, very often I quote something about Atelier Cologne, so I quoted the brand. It was bought by L'Oréal. When I discussed with the owner, Christophe, and I told him, if you have been a hired person inside L'Oréal, and you have proposed the project of your brand, someone will never approve it or not? He told me, probably not. Later on, they succeeded in some manner. I want to come in details. And then L'Oréal decided to buy the company. So, but at the beginning, it was quite impossible. It's like, the story about Apple. So Apple started in a garage with few people, and no one trusted it. They risked everything, and then it became Apple or Macintosh, whatever you want. So I think that we are a community of crazy people. Why crazy? But simply because there is passion as a main engine. passion and the desire. So when I act as a president of technical committee of Esxence, and I meet someone that we refuse or rejected, I told them, please let me know simply what is the reason why you exist. What is the added value you give to art of perfumery? Because if you don't tell me, that is simply someone that is making a new jasmine, a new vetiver, something, you made a better bottle, but we don't need it.
No.
There is Cosmopro for that.
No. No.
Go. I don't need it. I need simply crazy people that want to tell something that help the people to enjoy the message in a bottle. That's all. From the message in the bottle, we can find something. So everyone is free to do what they want. But the point is, we are simply trying to put together a community of crazy guys that would like to let the people enjoy what they dress. That's all.
Thank you. Aha, another question, sorry. Why is there so, because I'm the first time here, and we are like mainstream distributor, so I didn't notice a lot of natural niche fragrances. So like organic and natural ingredients. Is there any reason or?
If you want to answer, yes.
I know there's the brand called Essencional that someone I used to work with, that she's created her brand. She worked with, I believe, 5 perfumers. All the ingredients are sustainable, the packaging is recyclable, the glass is recyclable, and the price point is affordable. Mm-hmm. So I would take a look at that one.
Thanks.
There are some, but maybe they weren't able to come. I think mostly it would be in the spotlight area, but then I did see some that seemed to be along that line that were in the Villa Quarzo. Yeah.
But if I can add something, so natural. I can come in a complicated argument, but. We have a big problem that is IFRA. Mm-hmm. So the point is there is a richness in a natural sometimes for the simple reason that in a normal if you distill rose, you have 480 different chemical substances in it. The one that give the higher contribute to the smell are the lower contents. So when you selected them, obviously you have a smell of rose, but all the other 400 liter impurity give the wonderful richness of the naturals. So the point is, when you forbid me to use something that, I used to say something very simple to the journalists. Do you know any dyed people for perfume in the past 700 years? Why in the hell we have obliged not to use something obliged by someone that is not an authority? So it's not a law. But try to convince a buyer in the department store to buy something that is not IFRA, respecting IFRA suggestion. But that is a little criminal. But someone withdraw from the market the crackers or the bread or aspirin or sulfamidic that can cause you death if you have an allergy. I have no track of one dead man for perfume in my life. Never happened. So we can understand the reason why for that. So sometimes I would like to promote the IFRA against the perfumes, making only naturals. Unfortunately, the rules of the market will kill your company. So how many fragrances has been reformulated in the past 5 years? How many? There was a book that sometimes I suggest to the people that is Musk. I don't remember the author now, but the name of it's a small book. And it's the story about someone that used a fragrance and suddenly someone changed the formula. It was completely crazy for that. So I want to tell you what is the end of the story, but this man was completely disappointed. It was impossible to find again his fragrance. And what's about some masterpieces? So thanks so much once again to Osmotech that let us to smell something that is no more existing. It's a pity. Anyway, we can try to make a sort of resistance to that. So it's not a maniac attitude to naturals. It's only the fact that naturals sometimes are much more rich than any other component. So if possible, let us to use it.
Thank you.
Just to add to that, I think that there's also a misunderstanding about natural ingredients and synthetic ingredients, because oftentimes a synthetic ingredient will be used because it actually protects nature from exhausting a resource. And I think that the consumer, I know the consumer doesn't know that. I've been fighting that battle since I was a buyer at Sephora 10 years ago. So it's something where people think, oh, it's natural, it's better. Well, not if it's exhausting the supply of sandalwood.
Or animals. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, moreover, if I can quote some example, there are some usage of some ingredients like vetiver. Vetiver is a wonderful system to clean the waters. So if you really improve the usage of this island with the roots that are filtering, you will have a lot of material also we can distill and purify and it's not affecting. Sandalwood, if we can have back the forest of sandalwood, would be wonderful. And if you cut one tree and you get other tree, and so, or you have a lot of story about vanilla, etc. So it will be interesting. And once again, I invite every one of you to read the manifesto by Christophe Lodamiel, yes. Christophe Lodamiel published some time ago, you can find it easily in the net, a manifesto called Liberté, Égalité et Fragrancité. But with a lot of points that are so easy, so important, and also under educational point of view, usage of ingredients, whatever you want, there's a lot of things. So it's very dense. And you just suggested for everyone to how to approach in a proper manner this thing.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting, but I have a question for Karen. First of all, I agree with almost everything that you said, especially fragrance being used now as a mood shifter and a mood booster, and gender fluidity and sustainability, that is also important now. But I want to ask you about what do you mean by innovation in the niche field, because as far as I feel, innovation is monopolized by big companies who are ready to invest into the studies of new chemical compounds and new innovative ingredients. And also niche brands are always stuck with small batches, and usually they only can afford buying a simple blank glass form. I mean, sometimes everything looks the same, right? And what kind of innovation do you mean?
Well, one I would say would be the use, the combination of scents, because you tend to find in niche uncommon blends. So where I'm going to just make something up, but maybe they're putting a leather with something that it's never been done before. The example that comes to mind, and I don't think this brand is here, is DS Durga. It's extremely innovative in their creations. And in fact, yesterday we had Mark Buxton, who, if you want to talk about innovation and creativity, that's someone to talk to. He's making fragrances that are used with film. You know, maybe it's not so much from a commercial standpoint, but you do see the inspiration, the innovation that comes from this sector that does then affect the big brands, because the big brands are afraid. So they're not taking the risk because it's all about profitability.
So you didn't mean the technical innovation, but the creativity that...
I mean, if you're talking about creating a new format of applying fragrance, that's hard to find. I've tried to find it for over 10 years. So we had roller balls, and those didn't even exist 15 years ago. It wasn't an item that was for sale. Now you see a re-rise in concrete, concrete like a solid fragrance. I did see a fragrance that's like a pen. Okay, so it is an innovative way of applying fragrance. I think it's also in the thought process.
tell you, moreover, the fact is that some big companies sometimes create some new ingredients that are not immediately used in the mass production, but used prevalently in our sector. So, and creativity is also, I used to say, 15 years ago, no one is using saffron in a perfume or coffee or not of it, some other ingredients anyway, that are, or wood, simply. I remember the first wood was created here, in that area, 15, even 17 years ago. Wood in the Western composition, I mean, because obviously Arabian people are using wood since centuries.
But I really thought that with oud, the rise of interest for oud was right after Givaudan had a nice base, kind of imitating the natural material, and then it was Yves Saint Laurent M7.
Historically, it's not, surely yes, availability of the product obviously helped the usage, but the ingredient was existing before. You know that probably 80% pretend to have wood inside as not wood, real wood inside in the composition. But wood, the point is when you have the merging of different culture, so something that was, at the beginning, let me say, everything that is related with the African, what is the name of the...
African stone?
Now, everything about food from North Africa, for example. I forget the name of the main ingredient. And you have cumin, for example, something like that. Since 10 years ago, everyone smelling something like that is a foreign guy. Today you find it. Or you have ginger. Ginger today was more, let me say, you can read that as Japanese. Today is absolutely common for us. So you merge cultures. This typology of research with something already existing, not necessarily created, is how to create a new way to smell and to confuse the things.
So basically, I understand you met the artistic creativity and this type
but
of
also the
innovation.
overdose. Sometimes you can find some ingredient that was overdosed, sometimes, changing completely the approach. So it's like music. How many centuries we have only 7 notes? But you know that there is a lot of people that are creating something new in music with the same 7 notes.
Hello. I wanted to know if these data are available or are public, the results of the research. First question.
Yes, because you will find the video online.
Just this, okay. And the second question was about a new survey. Because as Chiara said, there is a target out of the research that is the 35 to 45 years old, which I think has the most... the people you can be influenced by communication, by companies, while 45 years old are already, already done. Like they decided to go to the store, they enter in the store, and they are just the 2%, while the younger target now maybe can be the 2%, but with a good communication, especially through digital channels, can become, for example, like 6 or 7%. And as Chiara said, that they have money. They want to appear. They have this sense of exclusivity that all of the previous generation didn't have. So that was my question. Thank you.
I leave Marco probably to answer, but I have to remind you that the survey was made with the contacts, email contacts we had with people that already visited or contacted Esxence. It's a matter of fact that there is a natural selection. The point is how to reach the other one. That's obviously. So we have to start obviously from something that we had, also considering the privacy and everything about it. So obviously we have the compliance is very important. So the starting point is interviewing people that is already involved. Obviously, what you are suggesting, how we can interview people that have to probably knows our sector, our market, but are not professionals. Okay, that's true.
Yes, I'm with you, Silvio, and the point is actually we've been addressing what we call the educated customers. They already know the product, they already had taken the test, but this is the starting base. I think there is a lot of room for improvement if you address uneducated audiences. But innovation does not only comes from technical innovation on the product in this case. Let's think, for example, on alternative business models to distribute or to reach these people. Why not maybe considering a different way of proposing the purchase, not only on shelf purchase, but maybe delegate me as a store manager, which is operating online, in building a road for you. So I know you buy 5 items every year. Okay, and you've taken the test in my shop, so I clearly profiled you. Why not going on a subscription model? Maybe you just stay with me, and every 2 months I'll give you a hint or a package of samples that could fit your needs. It's an option to bring you back into my shops again. But it's a way to establish the relationship.
It's something already existing but not so common in the sense that CRM now, for example, use it in the contacts. When you have any shop, you get all the information, you make the profile, and then you can send email, personalized email telling there is something that you probably should like that arrives in the shop, we can invite you to discover it and something like that. Incidentally, I'm also one of the founders of Nose in Paris, and you know that there is a diagnosis you can do also online, receiving samples. That is one of the models. Then we have sent pages in China or something like that. So the point is exactly, one of the aim of the Essencional is exactly to find all the positive cases around the world and try to suggest the people to make something similar, improving the possibility to the people to discover the added value we can grant them.